Don't forget to smile, champ.
The wrench slipped from my greasy fingers as I heard my wife's voice drift through the open garage door. Sarah was on speakerphone again, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for conversations she thought I couldn't hear. "I'm so far out of his league, it's embarrassing," she laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. "Tom still makes me coffee every morning like some devoted puppy. It's pathetic." I wiped my hands on the oil-stained rag, my jaw clenching as another voice joined the conversation. Male, smooth, cocky. "Well, your embarrassment is about to be over," I muttered under my breath, pocketing her car keys. The voice belonged to Derek Matthews, some hotshot from Pinnacle Security Solutions, our biggest competitor. I'd seen him at industry mixers, all flash and no substance, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits to hide his complete lack of character. "When are you going to tell him?" Derek's voice oozed false concern. "I mean, we can't keep meeting at the Sunset Motel forever." My stomach dropped. The Sunset Motel. That explained the mysterious charges on our joint credit card, the ones Sarah claimed were client dinners. "Soon," Sarah replied, and I could practically hear her checking her manicured nails. I just need to figure out how to break it to him gently. Tom's so fragile. He still thinks we're happy. Fragile. The woman who'd watched me take punches in boxing rings for 15 years thought I was fragile? I'd built Mitchell Security from nothing, working 18-hour days to give her the life she wanted. The white crossover she was talking about cheating in? I'd bought that for her birthday last year, working double shifts for 3 months to afford it. "His little security company is so cute," Sarah continued, her voice dripping with condescension. "Playing detective with his cameras and alarms. Meanwhile, you're closing million-dollar contracts." Speaking of which, Derek's voice dropped to what he probably thought was a seductive whisper. "I have some new ideas for tomorrow night. Bring that black dress." I'd heard enough. Moving silently through the shadows of our backyard, I approached the kitchen window. Sarah stood at the counter, her back to me, completely oblivious to my presence. Her phone lay beside her, still on speaker, still broadcasting her betrayal to anyone who cared to listen. But what made my stomach turn wasn't just the affair. It was the group chat notification that popped up on her screen. Sarah's Secret Squad. The preview showed messages from her best friend Jennifer and 2 other women I'd considered friends. Jennifer. "Is Tom still clueless about Derek?" Sarah. "Completely. He actually thanked me for working late yesterday." Jennifer. "God, how did you ever marry him? He's so beneath you." Sarah. "I was young and stupid, but Derek's gonna change everything." I backed away from the window, my mind racing. This wasn't just an affair, it was a complete character assassination. These people I'd welcomed into my home, whose kids I'd coached in Little League, whose cars I'd fixed for free, were treating my marriage like their personal entertainment. The next morning, I made Sarah her coffee as usual, watching her face for any sign of guilt or remorse. Nothing. She scrolled through her phone, probably texting Derek while I stood there like the devoted puppy she'd described. "I'll be late tonight," she said, without looking up. "Big presentation." "Of course you will," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "I'll save you some dinner." She finally glanced at me, and for a moment I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Pity? It was gone before I could identify it. "You don't have to wait up, Tom. I know you need your sleep for your little business." Little business. The company that paid for her designer handbags and spa weekends was a little business. After she left, I sat in my office above the garage, staring at the framed photo of our wedding day. Sarah looked radiant in white, and I looked happy. Genuinely, stupidly happy. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner and best friend since high school, Mike Rodriguez. "Coffee, you sound weird in your voicemail." I hadn't realized I'd left him a voicemail. The previous night was becoming a blur of rage and disbelief. We met at Murphy's Diner, the kind of place Sarah refused to be seen in anymore. Mike took one look at my face and ordered us both the strongest coffee they had. "Talk," he said simply. I told him everything, the conversation, the group chat, the motel charges. Mike's expression grew darker with each detail. "That backstabbing?" He caught himself, glancing around the diner. "How long do you think this has been going on?" "Based on the credit card statements? 3 months, maybe longer." Mike leaned back in his booth, shaking his head. "You know what really gets me? Jennifer, after everything you did for her family when Paul lost his job?" Jennifer Walsh had been Sarah's best friend since college, and by extension, she'd become part of our social circle. When her husband Paul got laid off last year, I'd hired him part-time, helped them avoid foreclosure. Now she was orchestrating my humiliation like some twisted soap opera. "What are you going to do?" Mike asked. I stared into my coffee cup, watching the cream swirl in dark patterns. "I'm not sure yet, but they want to play games. I've been underestimated my whole life, Mike. In the ring, in business, apparently in my own marriage. Maybe it's time to show them what this fragile guy is really capable of." Mike grinned, the expression not entirely pleasant. "You know I'm in, whatever you need. Derek Matthews screwed us over on the Hartley contract last month, remember? Told them we were small time." I remembered. We'd lost a $50,000 installation because Derek had convinced the client we couldn't handle their sophisticated security needs. "This isn't just about business anymore," I said. "They want to humiliate me? They want to treat me like I'm beneath them? Fine. But they're about to learn that the biggest mistake you can make is underestimating someone who has nothing left to lose." That evening, I followed Sarah to the Sunset Motel. Not in my truck, too obvious. I borrowed Mike's sedan and parked 3 blocks away, walking through the shadows like the little detective Sarah had mocked. Room 237. I memorized the number, took photos of Derek's flashy red Corvette, and settled in to wait. When they finally emerged 2 hours later, laughing and groping each other like teenagers, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Sarah kissed Derek goodbye, her wedding ring catching the neon light from the motel sign. Then she drove home to me, probably planning to shower off his cologne before climbing into our bed. I was already home when she arrived, sitting in my recliner with a beer in the evening news. "How was your presentation?" I asked without looking at her. "Fine," she said quickly. "Boring. I'm going to shower." "Good idea," I replied. "You look a little flushed." She paused at the bottom of the stairs, studying my face, but I kept my expression neutral. After she disappeared upstairs, I walked out to her car. The glove compartment told the whole story. Receipts from restaurants I'd never been to, a spare tube of lipstick in a shade she never wore around me, and the final insult, a parking pass for Derek's apartment complex. I pocketed the evidence and went back inside, where I could hear Sarah humming in the shower. She was actually humming, washing off her affair like it was just another day at the office. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Great seeing you tonight, beautiful. Can't wait for tomorrow." D. He'd sent it to my phone by mistake. The idiot had confused our numbers in his contacts. I screenshotted the message and forwarded it to Mike with a simple caption. Game on. The next few weeks were a masterclass in psychological torture, and I was the one being tortured. Sarah's behavior became increasingly brazen, as if she was daring me to confront her. She started working late every night, coming home with elaborate stories about client meetings and strategy sessions. Her wardrobe transformed from the conservative business attire she'd worn for years to designer dresses that cost more than most people's rent. "New promotion?" I asked one morning, as she modeled a black cocktail dress in our bedroom mirror. "Something like that," she replied, not bothering to hide her smile. "Derek says presentation is everything in this business," Derek says. Derek, she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The worst part was watching our social circle turn against me. Jennifer started hosting dinner parties that I mysteriously wasn't invited to. Paul, the man whose mortgage I'd helped save, suddenly became too busy to return my calls. At Murphy's Diner, Mike slammed his coffee cup down hard enough to rattle the table. They're talking about you like you're already gone, Tom. Jennifer's telling everyone Sarah's finally ready to upgrade her life. Upgrade? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Like I'm a piece of outdated equipment. It gets worse, Mike continued. Derek's been bragging at industry events. Says he's going to show Sarah what a real man can provide. The guy's talking about your wife like she's a business acquisition. I felt that familiar cold rage settling in my chest. What else? Paul's working for them now. Derek hired him full-time, double what you were paying. Jennifer's posting on social media about their new chapter and leaving toxic people behind. Toxic people? I'd given Paul a job when no one else would, and now I was toxic. There's more, Mike said quietly. Your daughter. My blood froze. Emma was 17, a senior in high school, and the one pure thing in my increasingly complicated life. What about Emma? She's been posting TikToks about having a disappointing father and how her mom deserves better. Jennifer's been filling her head with poison, Tom, telling her you're holding Sarah back from her potential. I closed my eyes, feeling the last piece of my world crumble. Emma had always been a daddy's girl, but teenagers were impressionable, and Jennifer had always been good at manipulation. That night, I tried to talk to Emma, but she barely looked up from her phone. Mom says you might be getting divorced, she said matter-of-factly. She says it would be better for everyone. Emma, there are things going on that you don't understand. I understand that Mom's been crying herself to sleep for months, she interrupted, finally looking at me with eyes full of accusation. I understand that she works twice as hard as you and gets half the respect. Maybe if you had some ambition, she wouldn't be so miserable. The words hit like physical blows. Sarah had been coaching our daughter, turning her against me with carefully crafted lies and half-truths. Your mother hasn't been crying herself to sleep, I said carefully. She's been... What? Working late? Trying to build a real career while you play with security cameras? Play with security cameras. Even my own daughter had been taught to dismiss everything I'd built. I left Emma's room feeling hollowed out, but also strangely focused. They wanted to destroy me systematically, starting with my reputation and ending with my relationship with my daughter. It was time to fight back. The opportunity came sooner than expected. Pinnacle Security was hosting their annual client appreciation mixer at the downtown Marriott. Sarah had been talking about it for weeks, describing it as the event of the season. I hadn't been invited, of course, but Mike had a contact in the catering company. I arrived at the mixer wearing my best suit, the one Sarah had bought me for our anniversary 2 years ago, back when she still pretended to love me. The ballroom was full of Pinnacle's clients and employees, everyone dressed to impress and networking like their lives depended on it. Derek held court near the bar, regaling a group of potential clients with stories of his latest conquests. Sarah stood beside him, playing the role of supportive colleague, but I could see the way her hand lingered on his arm and the way she laughed just a little too loudly at his jokes. Jennifer was there too, along with Paul and several other people I'd once considered friends. They formed a tight circle around Derek and Sarah like courtiers surrounding royalty. I approached the bar and ordered a whiskey, positioning myself where I could hear their conversation. The problem with small security firms, Derek was saying, is they think small. They install a few cameras, maybe some basic alarms, and call it a day. But real security requires vision, sophistication. Exactly, Sarah chimed in. Some people are content with mediocrity, but others understand that you have to think bigger. Take Mitchell Security, for example, Derek continued, and I felt every muscle in my body tense. Tom Mitchell's been doing the same basic installations for 15 years. No innovation, no growth, no ambition. It's actually kind of sad. The group laughed, and I saw Jennifer whisper something to Paul that made him smirk. I heard his wife is finally ready to move on, one of Derek's colleagues said. About time. She's way too classy for that crowd. Sarah deserves someone who can match her ambition, Jennifer added. Someone who understands her worth. I'd heard enough. I walked over to their circle and the conversation died as they noticed my approach. Tom! Sarah's voice was artificially bright. What are you doing here? Thought I'd see what a real security company looks like, I replied, my voice pleasant but carrying an edge that made Derek straighten up. Well, you're certainly welcome to observe, Derek said with a condescending smile. Maybe you'll pick up some pointers. Oh, I'm learning all kinds of things tonight, I said, accepting a fresh whiskey from the bartender. For instance, I'm learning about the importance of innovation and vision in the security business. Derek preened, missing the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. You have to think beyond basic installations. Like thinking beyond basic hotel security, I interrupted, pulling out my phone. The Sunset Motel, for example. Room 237. Very innovative use of space. The color drained from Derek's face, and Sarah took a step back as if I'd slapped her. I'm also learning about sophisticated clientele, I continued, my voice growing louder as nearby conversations began to quiet. The kind of clients who appreciate attention to detail, like knowing exactly when and where their business partners are conducting their private meetings. Tom, please, Sarah whispered, but I was just getting started. I raised my glass to the growing crowd of onlookers. I'd like to propose a toast, I announced, my voice carrying across the ballroom. To men who can't keep it in their pants, and the women who help them practice. The silence was deafening. Derek's face had gone from pale to red, and Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. And to friends, I continued, looking directly at Jennifer and Paul, who are so loyal they'll stab you in the back with a smile. Jennifer's mouth fell open, and Paul took a step backward as if trying to distance himself from the explosion. You're drunk, Derek said, trying to salvage the situation. Security, we need... Actually, I'm stone sober, I interrupted. Probably the most clear-headed I've been in months. Amazing what a little truth can do for your perspective. I set my glass down on the bar and looked around the room at the sea of shocked faces. You all want to know what real security looks like? It's knowing who you can trust. And it's making sure that when someone tries to destroy your life, they understand exactly who they're dealing with. I turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at Derek. Oh, and Derek. Next time you want to steal someone's clients, try not to leave such an obvious paper trail. Some of us small-time guys are better at investigation than you think. The crowd parted as I walked toward the exit, and I could hear the explosion of whispered conversations erupting behind me. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was already buzzing with calls and texts. But the most important message came from Mike. Holy crap, Tom. Derek's boss just called me. Wants to meet tomorrow morning. I think you just changed everything. As I drove home through the quiet streets, I allowed myself a small smile. They'd wanted to humiliate me, to treat me like I was beneath their notice. Now they knew better. The next morning brought consequences I hadn't anticipated. Derek's boss, William Crawford, sat across from Mike and me in our small conference room, looking like a man who'd just discovered a ticking bomb in his office. Gentlemen, Crawford said, his voice carefully measured, I need to understand exactly what happened last night. Crawford was old-school corporate, the kind of executive who'd built Pinnacle from a regional player into a national powerhouse. He'd also been married to the same woman for 35 years and had zero tolerance for scandal. Mike and I exchanged glances. We'd prepared for this meeting, but Crawford's presence suggested the fallout was bigger than we'd expected. Mr. Crawford, I began, I discovered that my wife and your employee were having an affair. Last night, I made that information public. In front of 40 potential clients and half the security industry in this city, Crawford replied. The video is already circulating on social media. Derek's become a liability I can't afford. Video. I hadn't noticed anyone recording, but in today's world, everything was documented. What do you want from us? Mike asked. Crawford leaned forward. Derek Matthews has been a problem for months. Inflated expense reports, questionable client relationships, and now this. But firing him creates complications. He knows too much about our operations. I saw where this was heading. You want him to leave voluntarily. I want him to have a reason to disappear quietly, Crawford corrected. And I want to make sure Pinnacle isn't associated with this mess any longer than necessary. Over the next hour, Crawford laid out a proposal that was both business opportunity and personal revenge. Pinnacle would subcontract 3 major installations to Mitchell Security, giving us the growth we'd been fighting for. In return, we'd help ensure Derek's departure was permanent and quiet. There's one more thing, Crawford said as we shook hands. Your wife works in our corporate development division. Her position has become untenable. I felt a stab of something that might have been guilt, but it passed quickly. Sarah had made her choices. After Crawford left, Mike and I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Did that really just happen? Mike finally asked. Derek tried to destroy us, I replied. Now he's handed us the keys to his kingdom. But I wasn't done, not even close. That afternoon I drove to the bank and moved our joint savings into an account Sarah couldn't access. 15 years of shared finances ended with a few signatures and a wire transfer. Next, I visited our insurance agent and removed Sarah from our auto policy. Her precious white crossover, the one she'd been using for her affairs, was now uninsured and technically unregistered, since the registration was in my name. The final stop was a locksmith. By evening, every lock in our house had been changed. Sarah arrived home at her usual time, probably expecting another quiet evening of lies and deception. Instead, she found her suitcases on the front porch and a house she could no longer enter. She pounded on the door for 10 minutes before I finally answered. What the heck is this, Tom? This is reality, I replied through the chain-locked door. You want to be out of my league? Congratulations. You're officially out of my house, too. You can't do this. I have rights. You have the right to find somewhere else to live, I said. I suggest calling Derek. I'm sure he'd love to help with your housing situation. Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the woman I'd married. Tom, please, we can work this out. Work what out, Sarah? The affair, the humiliation, the way you turned our daughter against me? I never. Don't. My voice cut through her protest. I heard you, remember? I know exactly what you think of me, what you've told Emma, what you and your friends have been planning. She tried a different approach, her voice becoming soft and pleading. I made mistakes, but we have a history together. 15 years, Tom. That has to count for something. It did count, I replied, right up until you decided I was beneath you. I closed the door and listened to her stand there for another few minutes before finally leaving. Through the window, I watched her sit in her car, probably calling Derek or Jennifer for rescue. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Mom says you locked her out. This is crazy, Dad. I typed back, ask your mother where she's been spending her evenings for the past 3 months. No response. The next morning brought a visit from Jennifer, who arrived with the righteous fury of someone who'd never been held accountable for her actions. You're being cruel and vindictive, she announced when I answered the door. Sarah made a mistake, but destroying her life won't solve anything. A mistake? I laughed. Jennifer, she's been planning to leave me for months. You've been helping her do it. Don't pretend this is about one mistake. She deserves better than this, Jennifer shot back. Better than you. Then she should be happy, I replied. She's free to find better. Of course, she'll need to do it without access to my bank accounts, my house, or my car insurance. Jennifer's eyes widened as the implications sank in. You're trying to make her homeless. I'm trying to make her independent, I corrected. Isn't that what you all wanted? For her to upgrade her life? This isn't over, Tom. You're right, I agreed. It's not. After Jennifer left, I called Mike with an update on our new contracts and a request for a favor. His cousin worked at the local newspaper's business section, and certain information about Derek's employment history might be newsworthy. You sure you want to go nuclear? Mike asked. They declared war on me first, I replied. I'm just fighting back with better tools. That evening, Emma came home for the first time since the lockout. She found me in the kitchen, making dinner for one. Dad, this has gone too far. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw Sarah's influence in every line of her posture, every inflection in her voice. Has it? I asked. Emma, did you know your mother has been having an affair for 3 months? Her face flushed. She wouldn't. She would, she did. And she's been planning to leave us both for a man who makes more money. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd saved, the group chat messages, the credit card statements, the photos from the motel. Emma stared at the evidence, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and something that looked like grief. She said you were holding her back, Emma whispered. What else did she say? That you didn't appreciate her, that you took her for granted, that she deserved someone who understood her worth. And what did Jennifer tell you? Emma's silence was answer enough. They've been poisoning you against me for months, I continued, making you think I was the problem so you'd take her side when she finally left. My daughter began to cry, not the manipulative tears of a teenager trying to get her way, but the broken sobs of someone whose world had just collapsed. I held her while she cried, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I might salvage something from this disaster. What happens now? Emma asked. Now we find out who your mother really is, I replied, and we make sure she can't hurt us anymore. The newspaper article ran on Thursday morning, buried in the business section but devastating in its implications. Local security executive inflated credentials, sources say, detailed Derek's fabricated MBA, his exaggerated sales figures, and his pattern of inappropriate relationships with married clients. My phone rang before I'd finished reading it. Tom, you magnificent bastard, Mike's voice was gleeful. Derek's been fired, effective immediately. Security escorted him out of the building an hour ago. What about Sarah? Crawford called her into his office this morning. She's been transferred to their Portland office, effective Monday. Portland? 3,000 miles away from her affair, her support network, and her daughter. She'll never take it, I said. She doesn't have a choice. It's Portland or unemployment, and with Derek's scandal attached to her name, she's not exactly marketable right now. I should have felt satisfied, but something nagged at me. The whole situation had been too easy, too neat. Derek was an idiot, but someone had been orchestrating the broader campaign against me with surgical precision. That afternoon, I got my answer. Emma came home from school with red eyes and a story that changed everything. Dad, I need to tell you something about Jennifer. We sat in the living room where Sarah and I had once planned our future, and Emma told me about the conversations she'd overheard, the coaching sessions disguised as friendly advice, the systematic campaign to turn her against me. She's been planning this for over a year, Emma said. She told Mom that you were holding her back, that she deserved better, that Derek was interested in her. Derek was interested in your mother, or Jennifer told your mother he was interested. Emma's face went pale. Jennifer set it up. She introduced them, arranged their first meeting, even suggested the motel. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Why would Jennifer do that? Because of what happened with Paul's job, Emma said quietly. She blamed you for him getting fired from his old company. I remembered now. Paul had been let go from Morrison Industries after I'd reported safety violations at one of their sites. The violations were real. People could have been hurt. But Paul had been the scapegoat. Jennifer's been planning revenge for 2 years, Emma continued. She wanted to destroy your marriage and your business. She thought if Mom left you for Derek and Derek stole your clients, you'd lose everything. And Derek? Was he in on it? I don't think so. I think he just saw an opportunity and took it. But Jennifer? She's been manipulating everyone. That evening, I called Mike and Crawford with the new information. Crawford's response was immediate and decisive. If Jennifer Walsh orchestrated this situation, she's created a liability for Pinnacle, he said. Derek was stupid, but Jennifer committed corporate espionage and marriage fraud. I want her gone. What can you do? I asked. More than you might think. Jennifer's husband works for one of our subcontractors now. Her children attend a private school paid for by Pinnacle's Employee Assistance Program. She has more to lose than she realizes. While Crawford dealt with Jennifer, I focused on the final phase of my plan. Sarah had been calling constantly since the newspaper article, her messages growing increasingly desperate. She'd been staying with Jennifer, but that arrangement was about to end. I let her calls go to voicemail, listening to her voice evolve from anger to bargaining to something approaching panic. Tom, please call me back. Derek's been fired and they're trying to transfer me to Portland. I can't leave Emma. We need to talk. Tom, Jennifer says you're trying to destroy my career. This is insane. I made a mistake, but you're ruining my life. Tom, I know you're angry, but Emma needs her mother. Please, just talk to me. The final message came on Friday evening. Tom, I'll do anything, please. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Too little, too late. Saturday morning, I drove to Jennifer's house. Her husband, Paul, answered the door, looking like he hadn't slept in days. She's not here, he said quickly. I'm not here for Jennifer, I replied. I'm here for you. Paul's shoulders sagged. I know what she did, Tom. I know about all of it. Then you know she's been lying to you too. He nodded miserably. She told me you were trying to destroy our family, that Sarah was just defending herself against your misuse. But Emma told my kids the truth yesterday. What are you going to do? Paul looked back into his house where I could hear children's voices. I'm going to protect my family. She's not the woman I married. Or maybe she is, and I just never saw it before. Where is she? Hotel downtown. She's been trying to reach Derek, but he's not taking her calls either. I found Jennifer at the Marriott bar, the same hotel where Derek's life had imploded a week earlier. She sat alone, nursing a martini and staring at her phone. Hello, Jennifer. She looked up, her face cycling through surprise, anger, and something that might have been fear. Come to gloat? She asked. Come to understand, I replied, taking the seat across from her. Why, Jennifer? What did I ever do to you that justified destroying my marriage? She laughed bitterly. You really don't know, do you? You're so self-righteous, so convinced you're the good guy. Enlighten me. Paul's job, Morrison Industries. You destroyed his career because you couldn't mind your own business. I reported safety violations that could have ended someone. You reported violations that cost Paul his job. Her voice rose, drawing stares from other patrons. We almost lost our house. Our kids had to change schools. You destroyed our life. So you decided to destroy mine. I decided to show you what it felt like, she hissed. What it felt like to lose everything because someone else decided they knew better. By manipulating my wife into an affair. By showing your wife what she could have if she wasn't tied to a self-righteous loser who thinks he's better than everyone else. I studied Jennifer's face, seeing the years of resentment and rage that had been hidden behind friendly smiles and dinner party invitations. You know what the really sad part is? I said finally. If you just talked to me about Paul's situation, I would have helped. I would have made calls, opened doors, done whatever I could to get him back on his feet. Bice. I hired him, didn't I? Even after Morrison, even knowing he blamed me, I gave him work. For the first time, Jennifer's facade cracked. That was just guilt. That was friendship. Or it was supposed to be. Jennifer's phone buzzed, and she glanced at it desperately. Derek's not answering. Sarah's not answering. Paul won't talk to me. Maybe because they finally see who you really are. And what about you? She asked. What are you going to do now? You've destroyed everyone who crossed you. Feel better? I stood up, leaving money on the table for her drink. I'm going to go home to my daughter and rebuild my life. You should try doing the same. It's not over, she called after me. Yes, it is, I replied without looking back. You just don't know it yet. The block party was Emma's idea. Dad, you should celebrate, she said over breakfast the following Saturday. You won. You beat them all. I'd been thinking the same thing, but hearing it from my daughter gave me the push I needed. What kind of celebration did you have in mind? Something public, Emma grinned, and I saw a flash of my own vindictive streak in her smile. Something that lets everyone know exactly what happened and who came out on top. By Wednesday, invitations had gone out to the entire neighborhood, along with a carefully worded social media campaign that promised revelations, refreshments, and closure for recent community drama. The response was overwhelming. Everyone wanted to see how this story ended. Friday evening, I stood in my backyard watching Mike and his crew set up a small stage, sound system, and enough seating for 50 people. Emma had decorated with balloons and streamers, giving the whole thing a festive air that felt both celebratory and ominous. You sure about this? Mike asked as we tested the microphone. They wanted to humiliate me publicly, I replied. Seems only fair to return the favor. Saturday afternoon, the crowd began arriving. Neighbors I hadn't spoken to in months, business associates, even some of Derek and Sarah's former friends who'd apparently decided to switch sides now that the dust had settled. At exactly 3 o'clock, Sarah's white crossover pulled up to the curb. She sat in the car for several minutes, probably gathering courage before finally stepping out. She looked terrible. Her usual perfect appearance had been replaced by rumpled clothes, unwashed hair, and the hollow-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. Derek's red Corvette arrived 10 minutes later. He looked even worse than Sarah, if that was possible. The newspaper article had been devastating, but the social media fallout had been brutal. Someone had created a meme using his corporate headshot with the caption "Small Johnson Energy," and it had gone viral. Jennifer was the last to arrive, driving Paul's pickup truck and wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky. I stepped up to the microphone as the crowd settled into their seats. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice carrying clearly across the yard. I know there's been a lot of speculation about recent events, and I thought it was time to set the record straight. The crowd leaned forward, sensing drama. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that my wife of 15 years was having an affair with Derek Matthews from Pinnacle Security. But that wasn't the most interesting part. I paused, letting the tension build. The most interesting part was discovering that the affair had been orchestrated by someone I considered a friend, as part of an elaborate revenge scheme against me. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Several people turned to look at Jennifer, who seemed to be trying to disappear into her chair. You see, Jennifer Walsh decided that I needed to be punished for reporting safety violations that cost her husband his job. So she spent 2 years manipulating my wife, poisoning my daughter against me, and orchestrating my public humiliation. Jennifer stood up abruptly. That's not... Sit down, Jennifer, I said calmly. You'll get your turn. The authority in my voice surprised even me, and Jennifer actually sat back down. Now I know what you're all thinking, I continued. Poor Tom, betrayed by his wife and friends, probably going to give us a sad speech about forgiveness and moving on. I smiled, and several people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. But here's the thing about underestimating people. Sometimes they surprise you. I pulled out a stack of papers. Derek, thanks to your affair with my wife, I was able to expose your fraudulent credentials to your employer. You've been fired, blacklisted in the industry, and your reputation is so damaged that you're probably going to have to leave town. Derek's face had gone ashen. Sarah, your association with Derek has made you unemployable in this city. Your choice is Portland or unemployment. And since you can't afford unemployment, Portland it is. Sarah began to cry, but I wasn't finished. And Jennifer, oh Jennifer, your little revenge scheme backfired spectacularly. Your husband knows what you did. Your children know what you did. And thanks to some very interesting conversations with Pinnacle's legal department, you're facing potential charges for corporate espionage and fraud. Jennifer shot to her feet again. You can't prove... Actually, I can. I held up a recording device. Emma's been documenting your confessions for weeks. Amazing how much people will admit when they think they're talking to a sympathetic teenager. The crowd was dead silent now, hanging on every word. But here's my favorite part, I continued. Sarah's car, the one she used for her affairs, is parked right out front. Sarah, would you like to tell everyone about your car? Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. The car is registered in my name, insured under my policy, and purchased with my money. As of Monday morning, it's being donated to the local community theater for use as a prop in their upcoming production of Crimes of the Heart. I gestured toward the street where a tow truck was hooking up Sarah's crossover. The theater director assures me it will be well used. Apparently, they're planning to have it destroyed on stage every night for 6 weeks. The crowd erupted in a mixture of gasps, laughter, and applause. Sarah ran toward her car, but the tow truck was already pulling away. Derek, I called out, I have something for you too. I nodded to Mike, one who wheeled out a small cart covered with a sheet. When he pulled the sheet away, it revealed a clown costume complete with oversized shoes and a red nose. Your new employer, Murphy's Party Entertainment, requires all employees to wear company uniforms. I took the liberty of having this one specially made. Derek's mouth fell open. What new employer? Well, you need a job, and Murphy's needs someone to hand out flyers and entertain at children's parties. I may have mentioned to Murphy that you were looking for work in performance art. The crowd was laughing openly now, and Derek looked like he wanted to disappear. The best part, I continued, is that your first assignment is promoting the community theater production I mentioned. You'll be handing out flyers featuring Sarah's car for the next 6 weeks. Derek grabbed the costume and fled toward his car, followed by a chorus of laughter and applause. Jennifer, I said, turning to my former friend, I saved the best for last. Jennifer had gone completely pale. Your revenge scheme had one fatal flaw. You assumed I was as petty and vindictive as you are, but I'm not interested in destroying you. I'm interested in justice. I pulled out another set of papers. These are copies of all the evidence Emma gathered, along with documentation of your manipulation campaign. I'm not pressing charges, and I'm not trying to destroy your family. Jennifer looked confused. Instead, I'm giving you a choice. You can leave town voluntarily. Paul's already been offered a job in Denver, and the kids can start fresh somewhere new. Or you can stay here, face the legal consequences, and watch your family fall apart while everyone knows exactly what kind of person you are. That's not a choice, Jennifer whispered. Sure it is, I replied. It's the same choice you tried to force on me. Lose everything or leave. The difference is, I'm giving you a chance to keep your family intact. Jennifer stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked to her truck without another word. As she drove away, the crowd began to disperse, buzzing with excitement and disbelief. Several neighbors stopped to shake my hand or pat me on the back. Emma appeared at my side, grinning from ear to ear. Dad, that was incredible. Think I went too far? I asked. Are you kidding? They tried to destroy us. You just showed them what happens when they pick on the wrong family. Mike joined us as the last of the crowd filtered away. So what now, Tom? You've won. Derek's finished. Sarah's gone. Jennifer's leaving town. What do you do for an encore? I looked around my backyard at the decorations and empty chairs, at the house where I'd built a life that had been systematically dismantled by people I'd trusted. Now, I said, now I rebuild, better than before. Emma hugged me tightly. We rebuild, Dad, together. As the sun set over our quiet neighborhood, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the peace of forgiveness or moving on, but the peace of justice served and battles won. They'd called me fragile beneath them, out of their league. They'd tried to humiliate me, destroy my business, and turn my daughter against me. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated exactly what this fragile man was capable of when pushed too far. Sarah would start her new life in Portland, 3,000 miles from the wreckage of her choices. Derek would spend the next few months in a clown suit, a daily reminder of his fall from grace. Jennifer would leave town with her family, carrying the knowledge that her revenge had backfired spectacularly. And I would stay right here, in the house I'd built, with the daughter I'd saved, running the business that had not only survived but thrived. They'd wanted to show me what it felt like to lose everything. Instead, I'd shown them.